Hello everybody, welcome back to Wolfeei Extras. Today we have a post to look at, but we're going to look at it in a bit of a different context because this is a post I'm not looking at for like a first time experience. I've seen this post already, I've responded to this post already, just not here. And I want to just talk about it here because I think it shows a lot about just Minecraft event stuff in general, discussions, etc., and also kind of how to handle things maybe. So I'm gonna go over this post. It's a critical one, and kind of address it and maybe give some thoughts on maybe what not to do and what to do, etc. regarding sharing your opinion about anything really, but in this specific instance about Minecraft events. I'll throw out a disclaimer as well, or maybe not a disclaimer, but I'll throw out a little thing ahead of time here. The response to this post, you can see down here, was definitely pretty negative, you could say. Having no upvotes means you've been downvoted a good amount. I can't see the statistics, I think. Maybe I can. I don't really want to show it, even if I can. But 0 upvotes, 33 comments usually doesn't show much promising, or doesn't show lots of positivity towards your post. And I think there is a bit to be said about the defensive representation on this post. I do think that it is good to maybe, it's always good to share your opinion. It's always good to respond to things you think are necessary to be responded to, etc. But one thing I don't think is necessary is to maybe dogpile onto somebody. As much as somebody could maybe give a take or an opinion that isn't the best, maybe somebody could, this is not to this person specifically, this is just in general, because I've seen this happen in the past. Maybe somebody could be a bad person. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to dogpile onto them. You are not going to be a better person from grouping up with a bunch of people and kicking somebody down when they're already down. It doesn't really do anything. So I just want to get that out the way as well before we get into this post for the most part, because as much as I do think this post to an extent deserves a good amount of pushback, I don't think it deserves like getting shit on, right? In my opinion, at least to an extent. I think there's a lot about this that's funny or ironic or whatever, but I do think we gotta establish a ground where, like, even if somebody makes a post that you might think is bad or is wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're now justified to shit on them and then call yourself the better person, essentially. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, let's get into this post. Blue was always going to be an OP team regardless of the current practicing by Silver and Nerdy. This is an opinion, this is a take, and that's okay. You can share your opinion, that's fine. However, I think what this person ended up doing wrong to an extent was their attitude towards sharing this opinion, and also to an extent, and no, not to an extent, just in general, their attitude, or more so their lack of maybe changing their mind when responding to responses to this post, is my opinion, at least. So let's go over this post, and I'll share my thoughts as well to push back maybe what I do and do not agree with. Of course, as the organizer and as the person who made this team, I am not of the opinion that this was always going to be an overpowered team. But yeah, so we'll understand that I'm going to be on the opposite side of the opinion for the most part here. Recently on the sub, there has been a lot of discussion about Block Wars Brawl teams, specifically Blue, and about how strong they are after the recent revelation of Nerdy and Silver practicing every day, likely making Blue an incredibly OP team. That is possible. We don't know that, but possible, yeah. Something weird about this discussion is the idea that there was no way of knowing that Blue would be overpowered, or that I could have known. However, I would argue even without the heavy practicing, Blue would have still be by far the best team in the event and will likely dominate no matter what. I don't necessarily agree with that. Here is the roster, by the way. Somebody made a comparison in the replies. I'll actually try to find it so I can kind of analyze it a little bit more fairly. Here we go. This one. This was the response, and this is the response here as well. When looking at the team balancing, one thing that is just not debatable at all is that Blue team has for sure the best duo. The strongest duo is on Blue. I 100% agree with that. Yes. Does that necessarily make the team overpowered? No, because I do think that Fine and Silver being on the same team is the reason why people call it as strong as it is. I think there is something to be said about whether that is valid or not. I'll get into it with this response. So, in terms of the top frag, Feinberg, best top frag in the event, better than Radoon's, Wolfeei, Purpled, Shatter, Shadoon, Abolish, and Shane. I don't disagree with that. I do think Feinberg is the best first frag out of all of the teams. Then you look at Silver, best second frag of the event, better than Kyle, Boostfer, Other Silver, Bablu, Counterstein, Twiggy, and Hannah or Minitek. I also think that is very fair. I do think it is very fair to consider that Silverance is probably the best second frag out of any of the teams. That is true. I don't disagree with that. Then you get to Seapeekay. Fourth best third frag in the event. Better than SK, Dr. Donut, Montoya, and Liam. Worse than Zam, Sleepy, and Minotaur Hannah. I think, undebatably, Sleepy and Minotaur Hannah will do better than Callum. I think most likely Zam will do better than Callum. I will also say, most likely, SK will do better than Callum. And then I will also say, most likely, Montoya will do better than Callum. In my opinion. I don't know if you know, but Montoya played in the Spanish Block Wars, which admittedly was pretty low comp, but still it's relevant considering some of the people they were going up against, and I think Montoya ended up getting top 5 or something, right? Like a really, really high performance, which is very impressive. Montoya, I think, with the Block Wars experience and with having generally a pretty strong PvP team, is a likely person to compete with Callum. I think either equal or Montoya is better. Dr. Donut, I think, depends. I think Dr. Donut, PvP-wise, will smoke Callum. I think movement-wise, Callum could be a bit better. I think that one could also be pretty equal. And I don't really know how good Liam is, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're also on a relatively even playing field, in my opinion. They also mentioned this in the reply here, or the different person mentions this. You're definitely over-exaggerating the rest of the team. From recent performances, SK is stronger, and Montoya and Dr. Donut are wild cards, but they're both mechanically good. You could easily see them placing Seapeekay as well. I have high hopes for Nerdy, but this is later. So, still, I agree with the reply here. I don't think you can confidently say that Callum is the 4th best third frag in the event. No offense to Callum, of course. I'm just trying to be statistical about this. I think it is most fair to say Callum is probably the 6th or 7th best in the event. I think that's a much more accurate description to make. Then Nerdy, for reference, by the way, the teams, of course, right, to look at. So, yeah, Zam, 3rd frag here, Sleepy, 3rd frag here, SK, 3rd frag, Dr. Donut, 3rd frag, Minute will say 3rd frag, and then Liam is mentioned as the 3rd frag here. Could be Twiggy, could be whoever, or Twiggy is considered the 2nd frag, so Liam, then Callum, and then it's Montoya. Which I honestly think there's a chance Montoya is the 2nd frag unless you meant Counter is the 3rd frag, but that is I guess not really too relevant considering Montoya would not be better than Silver here, and Counter would maybe compete with Callum. So yeah, I would say calling Callum the 6th best 3rd frag is more accurate. It's at least going to be on average more accurate. Then Nerdy is being called the 4th best 4th frag, better than Ash, Grox, John Leashed, and Lee, worse than Andres, May, and Serpius. I think, realistically speaking, I had Nerdy predicted around 30th with 0 practice. Now, obviously bumped up to like 25th with the practice that is going in, maybe 20th. I think, on average, I would say, I agree Andres is for sure a better 4th frag. I would say that May, if she has a good event day, is for sure a better 4th frag. Otherwise, it is potentially equal. I think Serpius is a better 4th frag. I would also say Ash is definitely a better 4th frag. I think this is a major underestimation of Ashwag. I also think that Grox is a wild card. John Leashed I'm not too familiar with in terms of Minecraft skill, and Lee depends on the day as well. I think Lee on average will probably be equal-ish to Nerdy. I don't think there is a big distinction to be made there. So I would say Nerdy most fairly should be put at like 5th best 4th frag, maybe 6th. So that's already bumping things down a little bit. And then, I think in the replies here too, high hopes for Nerdy, but Ash is stronger, and maybe Lee as well due to experience diff, unknown for Grox. So that's totally fair. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then they call Quite the 5th best 5th frag, worse than Tubbo, Rain, Giga, and Seawat. I would say these are fair, right? Toby and Rain for sure. Giga depends, but probably Giga's better. Seawat should be better. Derek should be better by a mile, I think, as a 5th frag. I think this is a major understatement of how good Derek could be. Fanity, I think, as somebody who plays Minecraft events, should probably be considered a better 5th frag, and then Jess is debatable. So I think Quite most accurately should be put at like 7th or 8th best 5th frag, if not just the weakest player in the event, statistically speaking. So probably 7th, I think, is the most accurate to put Quite. It's also mentioned here, Derek is mechanically much stronger than Quite. Actually plays Minecraft, he would be a top 20 player in a regular Block Wars. Yeah, like, it's a major underestimation there. So that's my takes on this first part. So, for starters, this team has Silver, who is arguably the most mechanically skilled player who's ever played in the CC event. So the statement here is that Silver runs from a mechanical skill standpoint across all Minecraft events is the best, or across all CC events, so that's probably like mainline Block Wars, MCC, mainline PB, etc., is the most mechanically skilled player. Maybe Kel could be thrown into that debate, right? For the argument. Feinberg, of course, should also be thrown into the debate there. I think the only, maybe the only event Silver is outfragged. Has Silver or a team with Feinberg before? Silver, I know, has outplaced Feinberg in every Minecraft event I think they've played in together, but that doesn't necessarily like showcase the team difference. So they could be on par with each other. It's at least very similar. But it is arguable. I guess it is arguable that he could be the most mechanically skilled. I don't disagree with that. He's been fine in every event that they've played together, and the only player in this event who has ever outplaced him in an event is Shane, in a single MAME event where Shane had an OP team that won by like 2,000 points. Was that the team with me? I don't know. Suffice to say, Silver's an insanely cracked player who's a guaranteed top 5 regardless of practicing or not. I don't disagree with that necessarily either. I think that top 5 this event, the like team placement separated just from an individual skill standpoint, the top 5 should be Fine, Shane, probably Charlie, and then Purpled. That's the top 4, right? Fine, Shane, Charlie, Purpled, not necessarily in order, but that should be the top 4. After that is when you start getting debatable candidates for 5th. It could be Radoons, it could be me, it could be probably not Speed Silver, but Radoons, me. Maybe if Boblu locks in, could be Boblu. Shadoon is possible. Of course, Silver makes a lot of sense, and then I would say that's probably it. Maybe Hannah or Minute could shoot for 5th if they have a really good team performance. But Silver most likely is going to be 5th, and then the rest of the top 10 will probably be like me, Red, Shadoon, Boblu, whatever, right? The people I mentioned earlier. So I do think the top 5 is pretty definitive for this event. I don't disagree with that necessarily. I think even without practice, it is safe to assume Silver would get 5th, probably, right? Then, this is multiplied by the fact that Feinberg has teamed with him, who's the best player in CC Block Wars. True, he has won all but one order ups he's played, and his teams almost always do well in PvP and team games. Is that true? Team games, yes. PvP, is that true? Almost always do well in PvP? Let's take a look, because that could be very situational. Fine, statistically, his best game is Battle, which is from, in this series, yeah, he's done really well in Battle every time when he's played. This team was strong. This team was like pretty solid. I don't remember who all were on his team. This is not necessarily like an overpowered Battle team or anything, but it's like a pretty solid one. Right, their team also got like 4th, so that's not like a sweep at all. That's just a good performance in Battle, and as shown by Fine getting 1st in diff, mostly because of Feinberg, that is why that happened. So he is a good PvP player. That doesn't necessarily reflect his teams. Block Wars 13, that was with me. That was like not necessarily like a great PvP team, but not a bad one. His Twitch Rivals one was like fine. Not necessarily like a great team. Hold up, I need to see Battle. Still got 2nd though, so obviously a very good performance. Also a bit lower comp leaning roster overall, I think. No, not really that much actually. No, it's a pretty average comp leaning event actually. But yeah, his team got second in battle, pretty solid. Archers, of course, were the more dominant team, but they did well. They did well despite not having that confident of a PvP team, so that's just due to Feinberg again. And then Block Wars 15 battle, he got first. I assume his team did really well. Let me take a look. Battle, his team got third, with not necessarily like an insane battle team, so pretty solid. But I would say again, because Feinberg ended up getting a very high individual score, that's mainly due to Feinberg. That doesn't necessarily mean that his team is a good, or it doesn't necessarily have to do with his team being good for PvP, right? So it's very dependent on Feinberg specifically, which I guess does help the argument of, oh, Fein's good for PvP. So that depends. I also know Extraction is one of his weaker games on average usually, right? Yeah, one of the weaker ones, and then Lunge is kind of Mickey Mouse depends really, but I guess it's a decent argument. I wouldn't say that's like necessarily like Fine equals good at PvP games guaranteed. I think that's debatable. So yeah, considering Fine has had 3 teams in his entire history not make finales, it is insane to me that you would team him with someone who as mechanically skilled as Silver given his history. This duo is arguably the strongest to ever happen in Block Wars, not including Origins. Yeah, it is the strongest duo to happen for sure. Having 3 teams that haven't made finals is like a fine thing, I guess, to mention as an argument, but I also think it doesn't really factor in the resources we had available to make balanced Feinberg teams previously. It also takes a lot of time to really figure out how to exactly balance someone out fairly without just giving them a team that cannot win at all. Because that is the logic some people applied previously with Feinberg, was that any team that stood a chance was too good, so he only deserved teams that didn't stand a chance at all. Also funny to note that they mentioned Fines only had 3 teams in his entire history not make finals, and pretty much all of those were right just now. The only time he had made the finals as of recent was when he was teamed with Shane on a team that overperformed because of not the top 2 players, but we'll get to that later. So yeah, and then yeah, giving him Silver is just because it makes sense. Simple explanation, really. Just makes sense. It just makes sense. It really just makes sense. Because Fine and Silver, who would I team Silver with for the rest here? What that makes like more sense than the people that are on the respective team. I don't really know which slot would have made more sense than the blue team. And it's something people are really excited to see. So I don't think it really matters that much to see Silver and Fine together on a team together in that instance. And then, yeah, strongest to ever happen in Block Wars. In mainline Block Wars, possibly, though I think it's a little disrespectful to consider that statistically speaking, maybe Fine and Silver is the best duo when Fine and Shane just happened. Kind of feels like another instance where people underestimate how good Shane is, but whatever. Continuing forward, not just as a duo, you could get away with teaming Fine and Silver if you gave them 3 players who are likely to place bottom 10 in the event, but that's absolutely not what happened. I don't know, man. Giving them 3 bottom 10 players would have just felt like they stood no chance. Is that a crazy opinion to have? I feel like because the argument that this made is that you could have subbed out Seapeekay for Anthos, for example, right? Because it's known that Anthos was originally going to be on this team before Nerdy was on there, and that could have been the team: Fine, Silver, Nerdy, Anthos, and Quite. If I'm being fully honest, if that was the team, they would be guaranteed bottom half by a lot. For sure. You are not in this roster. That is not fair. I think that would have been for sure underpowered, in my opinion. For sure underpowered. And that doesn't necessarily speak on Quite, Nerdy, or hypothetically Anthos in this instance. It just shows the rest of the teams are very, very good. There are very, very good teams across the rest of this roster. And I think, again, it's a little disrespectful to just everybody else to be like, oh my god, Blue is for sure winning. It's like the best team for sure, like by a lot. When not really. I don't know. Like, yes, Fine and Silver, best duo. 100%, yes. But we already looked over it. They have the number 1 first frag and the number 1 second frag, and like the number 6 or 7 third frag, and the number like 5 or 6 fourth frag, and like the number 7 or 8th lower end player. And could the leadership from Fine and or Silver help raise their teammates' performance and to make their team stronger? Sure, right? Sure. But then you're completely ignoring that certain teams have not just trios, but some even have groups of 4 insanely good players all on the same team that can just do the same thing. You know how much easier it is to perform better when you have confident teammates to work off of? That doesn't just apply when you have Feinberg, that also applies in my instance, for example. If you're Andres, you have 3 players, Boostfer, me, and Sleepy, who statistically are better. As Andres, I'm chilling now. I get to just like focus on what I think I'm best at because I can confidently rely to an extent on my other teammates to perform, because the pressure is not just on me to perform. I have 3 other good teammates to work off of. The same works here on the red team. Ash has Kyle, Zam, and Red to bounce off of. Same for Toby. Like, they have so much to work with there. It's great. Even just if you look at other teams that have stronger duos, somebody like Dr. Donut, as much as he still should, try to perform from a mechanical standpoint, and especially PvP games, he has X Shatter, top 5 Block Wars players pretty much of all time. And then Boblo, who's very, very good to work off of. Other teams have good resources to work with. People, or in this instance, some people I should, specify, because I think something that is not stated enough is that this is a vocal minority that has this opinion. Usually at least it's the way certain people talk is usually the vocal minority. But people pretend like the S tier duos or the S plus tier duos are the only ones that stand a chance when other teams are super stacked for the rest as well, and they just get brushed off. Nope, Feinberg Silver on the same team. That's got to be the strongest one. Not even really looking at the other teams. So whatever. Firstly, Seapeekay is ridiculous as a 3rd frag for that team. It doesn't do as well at Block Wars, but he usually gets at least top 20. I think Callum does well in Block Wars. I don't know if he does usually get, I think, top 20, but like barely, right? It's not like he gets like 12th or something. And again, no offense to Callum. Callum's great. I'm just using statistics as an argument. From a balancing standpoint, these rosters aren't like the strongest overall, and Callum's placing, he's just chilling and having fun with it, of course. Placing top half, but like on the lower end of top half. I think realistically, the amount of competitiveness with this roster is most notable and most noticeable in the mid section, in the mid portion. The majority of the newcomers are all like middle tier, higher middle tier Minecraft players, including the video application team and the Spanish team, are all like middle high tier players. Should translate to Callum statistically getting in the 20 to 25 range as opposed to the top half range. Maybe with having the Feinberg and Silver combo to work off of, etc. He could bounce into the top half, but I do think it is, if Callum places top half, it is genuinely a good performance to see him make it there, that high up in the leaderboard, right? Not something that can be brushed off as like, well, it was just, he was on a strong team. No, it's like, that's still a good performance. Callum will need to do a lot individually to still make it up that high. Also applies to the rest of the team, of course. If on this team, he could easily get top 15 or higher. No. Easily? No. No. Then you have Nerdy, who is a professional speedrunner. Yes, he did poorly in Pandora's Box, but it was on an 8th place team. Nerdy overall was always going to do at least top 30. Ignore him practicing, which likely gets him top 15. Crazy jump, by the way. I'd have to look at predictions off or on stream. I could probably look at predictions to kind of try to rank teams roughly of how they would perform. Saying that a bit of practice makes Nerdy go from like top 30, which I think most realistically was 25 to 30, to like likely top 15 is a huge jump. Yes, I've seen the clips of Nerdy and Silver doing duels with Naren and Soul or whatever, right? And I've seen them do whatever, like other practice and stuff. But that doesn't always translate over to the actual event, especially in terms of the PvP duels. It is very commonly known that duels PvP is not the same as event PvP. You're not looking at a 1v1 or a 2v2 in an open field with infinite playing room. You're working with a much different map style. You're working with a much different level of awareness. You're working with many other factors to consider that make things a lot more difficult and make it so you can't play like you play duels. So saying that likely top 15 for Nerdy is a little crazy. Shout out Nerdy again. Nerdy's great, but like realistically, I think if Nerdy gets high-end bottom half, that's a good performance for Nerdy. If Nerdy gets top half, that's insane. If he gets high-end bottom half, it's a great performance. If he gets like 25 to 30, that is expected. If he gets bottom 10 after all the practice, that's maybe an unfortunate performance, but I'm just saying, like, I expect him to get 25 to 30. If he gets high-end top or bottom half, cool. If he gets top half, great. Perfect. Well, not perfect, but like great performance from Nerdy. That is impressive, right? Should be acknowledged. Much harder to, well, hold on. Ignore him, and then much harder to being on a team with two insanely cracked players. It helps, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will do well individually. In contrast to the other two, I think Quite's a fine player to add to that duo. He usually plays between 35th to 25th, which combined with the high competition in this event would definitely allow an OP duo like that to exist. I do agree with that. I think Quite does help balance things out a little bit more. This team is made even more absurd when you consider Feinberg just got Shane on this team, and another very strong team would have been first if not for the surprising pop-off, so in green. And it's kind of crazy that you would give Feinberg multiple S tiers in multiple events when balancing the event. Honestly, the fact Fein gets so many strong teams at Block Wars despite always making finals is kind of silly. Granted, some of his teams in finals weren't the strongest, like Yellow 9. We are just completely ignoring that Fein I just showed the stats. Fein just had his first or potential first. I think he's actually not made finals. Yeah, he didn't make finals in Block Wars 6 or Block Wars Rookies 1, so we're just completely lying. He's not made finals 5 times, which still, of course, he's made finals more than he hasn't made finals, which is a lot. If you include Chaos, I think it actually might be a bit closer to equal, right? Because, no, he's still made finals more than he hasn't, but he's not made finals 6 times if you include Block Wars Chaos. So whatever, right? But recently had 3 back-to-back teams not make top or make the finals. Rookies 3 was intended to be a weaker team. Twitch Rivals not necessarily. Block Wars 15, yes. 16 was meant to just be a pretty average team, and it was supposed to be, like, it pretty much was. The only thing that happened was that unexpectedly Ruse popped the hell off. He did great. And then, of course, with that and the added higher performance from the S tiers on the team, they ended up getting second, I think, right? Yeah, second, and not even by like that crazy of a margin. Got second by a few hundred points over the Aqua team, and even the blue team was like fighting for it near the end. So honestly, somewhat close to an extent, right? I don't think it was necessarily the most balanced, but it was not bad. So I think it's a little silly. I also think it's funny that they're still hung up on a Fein and Shane duo happening when it really isn't that big of a deal, and it was pretty balanced, honestly. Considering an S-tier duo like that got second by not even that much, pretty balanced. Yes, did Shane underperform? Yeah, sure, of course, but Ruse's overperformance made up for that, and even then, because Ruse was able to do better, that also helped the rest of the team do a little better. There's a lot of factors to consider. I think had Shane had a regular performance and Ruse performed as predicted, the team would have gotten like 4th. So that would have been balanced. So regardless, right? That's all hypotheticals. But saying Fein can't have multiple S-tier or multiple S-tier teammates in back-to-back events, I don't necessarily think that's a crazy thing to say. Yeah, should S-tier duos be given to different S-tiers as much as possible? Sure, but in the instance of Feinberg here, it made the most sense, right? I've explained this on stream. In Block Wars 16, we had this trio of Haka, Shinri, and Ruse who wanted to play together. That was the foundation of the team, and we went into this being told and expecting Ruse to be a bottom 10 guaranteed player, maybe bottom 5. We then later found out he was actually, a bit more experienced at Minecraft because he had apparently done a practice stream. We didn't know that. We obviously, again, you can't predict that somebody's going to practice for an event. That's ridiculous if you think I can predict that. I can't. I can't predict when somebody practices. But Ruse, Shinri, and Haka was a trio that's asked to play and was planned to play for this event slot, and we wanted to make it work and make it balanced. The only way it was able to be balanced was with an Esther duo. Keep in mind, we didn't know Ruse was going to do better. So assume, just like what we did, that we're going to have like 2 people bottom 5 and 1 person like high-end bottom 10, right? Essentially is what the team would look like. The only way to balance that out is an Esther duo. Coincidentally, what was requested was for Fein and Shane to be on the same team. Shane, I think, was benched the event prior, and Fein had recently been benched. Both of them, knowing rookies was coming up soon, should have been in this event no matter what. Because of that, same reason why Purple was in this event, same reason why other people were in this event, right? And they made sense to be on the same team for that reason. Statistically, again, would have been a pretty bang average team. Seemed like there was no problems. The only reason still that I think this team ended up being stronger than we expected was because Ruse was a better player than we expected. Similar to how the Purple and Kim duo in Block Wars 11 was not expected to be as strong as it was because May was a significantly better player than we expected. Was it because of the Kim and Purple duo? No, because they performed as expected. It was a different teammate that was better. And in this instance, Fein and Shane performed roughly as expected. I do think Shane would have been statistically a little higher, would have been 3rd probably in this roster, right, considering the gap that Purple had here. But even then, with the few extra 100 points that Shane would have brought in here, maybe like 300, I think somebody talked about it in the response to this post as well. I don't remember exactly where it was, but the underperformance from Shane, I think, was just like Tomb Titans and something else. I don't know where specifically it is. I'm trying to find it. I'm so sorry. But no, I can't find it exactly. There was somebody who broke it down a little bit here about like the few 100 points difference, right? That would have that Shane missed out on. That then Ruse's performance makes up for, because he almost got 2,000 points, right? Realistically, we would have expected Ruse to get like pretty much right there, I guess, right? Like 400 less. Shane making up 400 points, unlikely, and then of course the rest of the team would do a bit worse because, it's a point reiterated. I don't need to keep going in circles about it. But this is an opinion, right? This is an opinion, sure, whatever. Next time Fein plays, of course he probably wouldn't get an Esther duo. He's just had 2. But to say that Fein can't have an Esther teammate because he just had one, it depends. Whatever. TLDR Blue was a horribly OP team, regardless of Nerdy and Silver practicing with one of the strongest duos ever, and good enough supporting players to make them very likely to make finals. Nerdy and Silver sweating just put the nail in the coffin. I think with no practice, again, this is my opinion, and I've mentioned this in the past. Assuming the default assumption for Block Wars, which is people don't practice, they just show up and have fun. I don't think by default the blue team would have been overpowered. I think the blue team would have been a contender. I don't think it would have been a team that easily loses or easily wins. It would have just been pretty solid, right? Pretty average team. I do think you would have been relatively balanced because they have the strongest duo, but one of the weaker lower ends all across the board compared to the other teams. Does the practice make the blue team stronger? 100%, of course, right? I would be stupid to pretend like Nerdy and Silver practicing and getting prepared compared to the other teams doesn't make a difference. Of course that makes a difference. That's going to make them better. Does it matter that much for Silver? No, I think for Silver it makes him go from a likely 5th place to maybe a 3rd place, right? Depending on how the other teams perform. But like marginal improvement for Silver doesn't really matter that much. Nerdy, on the other hand, is potentially gonna have a major impact on his performance, where I think he was roughly predicted to get like 30th, and now he could get like around 20th, right? Potentially. So that could be a pretty big step up, but ultimately we'll have to wait and see. You can't really say, oh, of course they're gonna guaranteed get top 15. You don't know that. Also, look at the rest of the roster. You don't know that. So either way, I think blue team would have been fine. I think the practice makes the team better, but I don't think it necessarily makes it a guaranteed first. Is it a likely first? Yes, I'd say like 80% chance that blue team gets first. Makes sense, but also that doesn't factor in potential game order, potential underperformance. We don't know how they'll perform in some of the other games, right? They'll probably do really well at the team games. They'll probably do really well at the movement games. PvP, we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. Either way. Yeah, there was another thing in the comments here. So I gave my little response here being like, my bad. Hey, sorry for experimenting with the teams, but like, come on. Every single time I say something, I do something fun. That's not like the other events. It gets complained about. My bad. It's like ironic. Of course, this one post isn't going to make me stop doing it. Because I think aside from like a few instances, like 2 of them, I think my experimentation has been pretty successful. There's just a few instances where the experimentation didn't work out as well because of an unexpected result. Like mentioned, Block Wars 11 with May, Block Wars 16 with Ruse. There's probably other examples as well. Either way, they respond to me here, which is something I want to talk about to kind of close things off. I'm not sure what information you were given about blue, but yeah, if you weren't informed of the total skill of silver or nerdy, I could understand why you'd form blue into a team. I would argue you could also have done some research on them as players, but I also understand why you wouldn't want to do that. Keep in mind, this is a response to the organizer of the event. Okay, I'll break this one down for you. So, silver was going to be invited no matter what. Most requested, newcomer, of course, etc. I am aware Silver's really good at Minecraft, like mentioned. He was given the highest stats I can give a newcomer on my sheet, which was 5th. For a newcomer, being predicted to get 5th is high. It's very high. Could I have used like Shane or Fine stats or whatever to make it maybe a little bit more accurate? Sure, but that would have only made like a few point difference. It doesn't really matter that much. So I know Silver. I'm aware that Silver's good at Minecraft. It's not like I invited Silver and put him at the MCC newcomer thing of just put him like 20th and see what happens. Of course I didn't do that, right? Nerdy was suggested to be invited by Fine because Nerdy was interested. Apparently I didn't know that, but Nerdy wanted to play, and statistically speaking, what we know and what I could have found out from researching, same thing. I know who Nerdy is. I'm familiar with Nerdy. Prediction wouldn't have changed. 25 to 30 range is what he was predicted from the jump. Would have been the same thing. He would have been there, roughly. I was never going to put Nerdy, based off of research, on the same level as like Dr. Donut, for example, as a newcomer, right? Whom I predicted like 20 to 25 range. Grox, potentially, right? Grox, I also predicted like 25-ish range. So yeah, maybe Nerdy would have been predicted around that, but that, again, statistically doesn't really make that much of a difference. Saying you could have done some research, but I understand why you wouldn't want to do that is a little interesting. Do you think I'm lazy or something? If I was lazy, Block Wars wouldn't look at all like what it looks like right now. So that's a crazy thing to say. Next up, they say, yes, I understand this is meant to be an experimental event, but that doesn't mean people aren't able to criticize it. True, 100%, sure. That I don't disagree with that. It was mentioned in the video that it is meant to be a more competitive event, which is all well and good, but it's hard to have an event that's truly competitive, which when one single team is significantly better than the others in sweeps. That is your opinion and your assumption. That doesn't necessarily have any truth to it. We'll have to wait and see. Not to mention the fact that orange and yellow are also significantly stronger than the other 5 teams of the event, meaning it's just between those teams for who makes final. I don't necessarily agree with that. It is a little difficult to really pinpoint how the teams will perform. I think one thing, I think orange and red are like almost equally comparable in my opinion. Do I think like me and red are similar? Sure. I think red mechanically is better than me, but sure, similar. Then it would probably be Kyle versus Booster. I think they're pretty comparable. Zam versus Sleepy, they're pretty comparable. Ash versus Andres, I think Andres is a little better, but then Toby versus Rain, I think Toby's a little better. So pretty similar teams. I don't think you could necessarily say that my team is definitively a standout, overpowered team alongside Yellow, when Red is literally right there and is similar format and probably pretty much the same in terms of balancing, in my opinion. There's also Aqua Team. If you compare Aqua Team to my team, for example, me and Shadoon could be pretty similar. Kind of depends. Booster probably a little better than Counterstein. Sleepy probably a little better than Montoya. Serpius and Andres could be pretty similar. Maybe Andres slightly better. Derek, though, should be significantly better Minecraft player than Rain, respectfully, of course. Altogether, I think this also, that's just speaking on in the event on average. That doesn't factor in, let's say battle is game 8. You really think my team is going to have a better battle game 8 that's going to have hella impact on the points than Aqua Team or Red Team? I don't know. That's very debatable. Maybe you could, but that's very debatable. Same applies to Yellow to an extent, right? They have a very strong standout trio, I would say, Purple, Silver, and SK. And then with a pretty solid 4th and a lower end 5th is the same format as like Pink and Green, pretty much, right? They have a standout, well, Green is more like a standout duo with very up in the air. Donut and Grox, we'll have to wait and see how they perform, but like we'll have to see, right? It depends. But like the format of the teams is not like that out of the ordinary compared to the other ones. I don't think there's like standout crazy difference in skill across the board there. I think in terms of like Yellow versus Pink, for example, right? Shane and Purple, like equal playing field. I think Hannah versus Speed Silver, for example, for a second frag, I think Hannah takes that on average way more. It would be disrespectful as hell to just say, oh, Speed Silver for sure outperforms Hannah, when Hannah's had years of event experience more compared to Speed Silver, and Speed Silver just does hoplite, right? He plays PvP, but like Hannah has more parkour like experience and stuff like that. Like, that's obviously going to be more in her favor to potentially win in terms of that battle against each other. Then SK compared to Minitech, pretty similar playing field, I think. SK, of course, has more Block Wars practice, but Minute, I think, has just way more mechanical Minecraft skill to work with, so I think that could be pretty similar. I do think May outperforms Lee. I think between Jess and Giga, it could be close, but it's probably more in Giga's favor. So, like, Yellow, I think, is a bit stronger on its lower end, whereas Pink is a bit stronger on its higher end, in my opinion. Like, that's how those teams compare, and I think that can be said across this roster. So, it's a little crazy. It's a little crazy to just, I don't know. It's a very, very strong opinion to have, but the way that it's being talked about here is as if their opinion is fact, which obviously is not true. Not that my opinion is fact, but I have the statistics to kind of showcase why I can at least argue in favor of my opinion. This is just kind of an opinion. You just say, well, they're good, so they gotta win, which is like, could be. Anyways, enough yap. 42 minutes. It's just a Reddit post, but hey guys, it's Mogul Mill content. Who cares? Yeah, TLDR, I guess, of this video is it's fine to share your opinion. It's fine to be critical of event stuff, etc. But watch your tone and be respectful, because some of the way that this post talks and some of the way that this person responds to things doesn't really come off the best way, and I think it's good to maybe learn from your mistakes to an extent. Because do I think this is a bad post? No, not necessarily. I don't think it deserves to get shit on like it has here, right? I don't think this is completely fair. However, I'm also not going to come in defense of this post and this person's way of handling things, because it feels very tunnel visioned. It feels like it's a post made by somebody who has an opinion and they want people to listen to their opinion, and they don't want to listen to anyone else's opinion. They don't agree with anyone else's opinion. They just have an opinion and they want you to agree with it. So either way, that rounds off this video with me yapping. I hope you enjoyed it, or something along those lines, right? To kind of talk about this. By this time, I don't think the people would see this anymore. Sorry to the blue team, by the way. Like, Fine and I have talked about this already, but like, they don't deserve the backlash that people give. Just the balancing or whatever. Even it could be fair, could be unfair. We don't know, but the blue team doesn't deserve this. You know how much this is the same thing with pink last time with this Block Wars 16 pink team that people just don't understand. But do you really think this pink team is able to, or more so Shane and Fine because they're the ones seeing the post? You really think Shane and Fine can go into this event and have fun as much as they originally would when they just see a bunch of people shitting on them the entire time? When people just say, oh, they don't deserve to win. No, it's way too strong. Oh my god, no, this dude, if they win, that's a problem. Oh my god, they can't win. Do you think the Fine and Silver and Nerdy in this team love seeing people just complain about their team consistently and talk about it being overpowered and oh my god, it's guaranteed gonna win. Oh my god, blah 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 blah. No, of course not. Like, that's not fun. So, yeah. Anyways, I hope you learned something from my yap sesh, and yeah, sorry blue team that you have to deal with this. Have fun with your training, of course, but like, it's just the response clearly is not the best so far, which I can't blame the blue team for, but it is just the audience sometimes behaving like this. Anyways, thank you all for watching. See you later. Goodbye.